that's our contact information. Again, I will stick around. I'll just be around clothing. So if y'all have any questions afterwards, I'm more than happy to send those. Cool. All right. Thanks, y'all.
Thanks, Jenny. So now we're going to transition into overview of our student organization conduct process. I'm going to invite my friends to come with them right now. Sorry.
Awesome, thank you, Christian. Well, I'm Candace Lott. Again, I'm excited to be here to talk about our student organization conduct process. We're going to do a brief overview, but this is not the end of the conversation you can have with our staff. So at any point, reach out to us. We do have my business cards and we'll be hanging out afterwards. So just keep that in mind. But we're excited for the role that you play at the university. And also I want to say, unfortunately, our executive director, Katie McGee, couldn't be here. She's out of the office this week, but she always wants to say welcome and we appreciate you. So with that being said, when we think of our student organization conduct process, we truly in our office want to emphasize that we strive to create a safe and equitable campus. So we really lean into our educational mission at the institution. And with that, the end result and goal of our conduct process ultimately is some of that behavior change and really emphasizing having a safe and healthy campus culture and organizations. And so with that, a vital role is us partnering with you as an advisor, national organizations, other stakeholders that are part of the process. So often we will include national organizations when we send out letters or any communication to the campus chapters. And when we do that, it's so that we can have that dialogue with everyone. So it's not intended to be punitive or something that we're like, hey, we're telling on you. We want to make sure that we can have open communication, that everyone knows what's occurring. So realize anytime we send out communication, we often send it to the advisor, the officer, along with the national board.
So the conduct process is initiated or starts with an incident report. And we get incident referrals into our office all the time. For any member of the campus community, some people from the Austin community at large, but essentially an incident report is essentially just an allegation of a possible violation of institutional rules. So we take a look at that information. We kind of do a preliminary review of it to see if it's appropriate to or which conduct process it need be we need to go down. So we'll look at that, say this information kind of looks like one of our tiers, and we're going to go use that resolution option there. The resolution tiers, if you go, we have a QR code at the end of the presentation that takes you to the Dean of Students website, or is it student conduct main website? But on that page, you will see the student organization sort of process laid out there, and there's a rubric for different resolution options. That preliminary review kind of allows us to determine what might be the most appropriate one. We also, in that preliminary review, determine whether or not an interim action is appropriate. These are going to be for really serious allegations. So typically what we do in those situations kind of say, hey, let's take a moment, let's stop doing what you're doing just for a second so we have some time to get better information about it. So that might be determined then, but those are actually very rare. We have in actions. Kind of an overview of the resolution options. So as I mentioned, you go on our website, go to student organization conduct process. You will see the rubric for the different tiers, right? So tier 1 is a prescribed resolution. This would be utilized in cases where we know the thing is a thing. So probably the easiest example of this would be if a student organization had prescribed sanctions from a previous violation, and they failed to fulfill those sanctions. We know what that is. The prescribed resolution process is probably most appropriate for that. So we're reaching out to the organization to say, this is a likely violation because you fulfill your sanctions as prescribed. And that's the communication that we can get, the organization gets. With tier 2 and tier 3, tier 2 being a partnership process, and tier 3 being a university investigation. In those instances, we're trying to find out more information, right? So with tier 2, the partnership process, we're putting that in the hands of the organization. Kind of going back to those goals that we talked about with the student organization process, we want to encourage self-government. So this gives the organization the opportunity to conduct its own investigation, compile those findings, and then submit that to student conduct. And then we'll have a consultation working with the organization, to figure out what's the most appropriate next steps. For tier 3, the university investigation, these are probably going to be more serious allegations where it's going to be kind of a more traditional investigation, talking to any relevant parties. So that's going to be an organization's leadership if it's related to behavior, certainly members of the organization, calling them in for interviews to try to get a little bit more information, and then from there make a determination whether or not there's a finding of a violation. So that's kind of the start of that process. We go through, try to get more information, and then make a determination whether or not there's a finding of a violation.
Okay, and then we also have the mutual resolution agreement. So if you've been an advisor for several years, you've seen a previous iteration of this. So want to acknowledge a year ago, we did do a major update of our institutional roles. We hired a consultant, and part of one of those changes is the mutual resolution agreement. So it's no longer at this stage a violation. So previously, an organization would enter into a mutual resolution agreement as an outcome of a process, or there would be a sanction. But this truly is a mutual agreement of, hey, we as the org requesting to enter into this, we want to make some changes. We realize maybe there's not a violation, but this is something that we want to do. And so with this, it will have agreed upon terms. So some of those terms might be very similar to sanctions. When we think of those educational opportunities, it might be completing a dimension from the successful student organization program. But it is emphasized to create behavior change. So do you know at any point during the conduct process, you can ask and submit that request. Our office will review it and then decide if a mutual resolution agreement is the best way to resolve the allegation. And then so thinking of other sanctions. So if you interacted with our office this last year, we called sanctions outcomes. We are going back to the traditional term of sanction, just easier on that. But with the important thing to know is we now separate a finding for a violation from sanctions. So realize that any org that goes through our process would have the option to both appeal the finding and the sanction. So two separate processes with that. Something we also do if we make it to the sanction phase, we will schedule a meeting with all relevant parties. So that's when we ask the officer, an advisor, someone from sorority and fraternity life, and if someone from the national office or regional representative wants to attend. And then it really is a discussion to figure out what is the best steps moving forward for the board. Once that meeting takes place, we then send a letter that says this is what we decided, and again, the board can choose to accept or contest it. And possible sanctions, we do have three types. The traditional one, status, so that being a set provision, if you're on probation, deferred suspension, and then we have those educational, and then structural sanctions typically would be something that we would consider if the national office recommends. But with that being said, I think it's also important to know that we're not trying to necessarily remove organizations from campus. Our goal really is the behavioral change. So I know previously, past versions of our office, it might have been there's like you make it 3 times, you're no longer a member of the community. That's not necessarily the case. It really depends on the types of behaviors that are going through our process for it. And with that being said, again, the QR code and we are always available as resources if you need it. Awesome, thanks.